Have you ever had a sex injury? If so, what happened? Not an injury per se, but we had to stop and I had to run to the shower immediately. We had both been drinking and decided to move it into the bedroom. I was on top. We were both super into it, and I grabbed the bottle of whiskey and took a big swig straight from the bottle while riding him. He thought it was hot and decided he wanted to do a shot off my body while I rode him. He poured whiskey down my chest and was licking it off, but he missed some and it continued down. I was really into what was happening, so it took a second for the pain to register. Holy shit, that burned. I hopped off of him, explaining that I felt like I had been set on fire and ran to the shower to hose off. Lesson learned. Whiskey does not belong anywhere near my vag. Still one of my favorite sex fail stories. The story of me losing my virginity was my girlfriend at the time had an ovarian cyst rupture during, causing internal bleeding. She had to go to the ER, have emergency surgery, and spend a week in the hospital, and is how both of our parents found out we had sex. After bar in a pretty aggressive makeout session, something felt weird, so I excused myself to the restroom, looked in the mirror and saw that her hoop earring had impaled my cheek and was just dangling off the side of my face. Pulled it out, swabbed some rubbing alcohol on it, and got back to business. It was super weird because there was literally no pain at all. Like it must have missed every nerve ending. I have jaw and throat sprain from vigorous oral sex in my medical record. I went to emergency thinking I had mumps. I did not. That's great. I mean, it sucks, but I think it's funny they would chart it that way. My so's jaw clicks, and she attributes it to all the head she's given me over the years. I definitely don't get it as much, maybe once or twice a month. But some married men don't even get it at all, so I am lucky to have such a woman. What I'm trying to say is, I appreciate your sacrifice on behalf of all mankind. It was a super fun night, so I suppose I'd have to say, still worth it. LOL, the worst part was, it was a student doctor I initially talked to. So the actual doc brought the rest of the class in. I guess to show the importance of asking the right questions when a patient is trying to self-diagnose. There was about 7 of them. I had a BF that was honestly too big. When we would have sex, I would tear and bleed. I actually had to see a sex therapist to learn how to consciously relax my vaginal muscles so that I wouldn't get hurt. We stayed together a lot longer than we should have. I ended up marrying a guy who is much more average, and the sex is a lot more enjoyable. Bigger is not always better. Legit, the reason why one of the guys I dated I had to dump, we had sex maybe 4 times, and I had to use a heating pad afterwards. It was not enjoyable at all. Hurt too bad, and the next few days were so uncomfortable. I felt bad for doing that, but I couldn't live my life like that. He was pretty cool, but I just couldn't. Pretty standard. Bent the pole between thrusts. Pretty rare. During a BJ, I got transient global amnesia, TGA, which caused me to lose the previous 48 hours. It can be triggered by orgasm, and it was scary AF. Forgot how I got where I was going, who I was meeting. I remembered my name, address, family, etc., but had no idea what day of the week it was. It all came back after 24 hours, with the exception of a 20-min period. Not myself, but the wife had some terrible problems. She swelled up, put on weight, and after 9 months and a lot of pain, this horrible, slimy little thing came out of her. Not mine, but a friend. Hand sanitizer and lube in similar containers near the bed resulted in a sanitized vagina. X was riding me, bent my unit in half to the point I screamed and rolled over. Next day, she showed up with an ice cream cake saying, "Sorry I broke your dick" written on it. Said the guy at Dairy Queen lost his shit while writing it. Jeff went a little nuts and got semen in my eye. Hurt like hell for quite a while afterwards. Kept imagining sperm trying to impregnate my eyeball. I'm uncut. Said person jumped on without lube and my uncut part ripped. Wasn't too bad, but definitely killed the mood. Had to take some time off for a couple weeks. Yup, had a boyfriend who really wanted to do anal even though I did not. He kept pushing for it. I finally agreed. I was on my back and told him it was hurting and I wanted to stop. He told me, it wouldn't fucking hurt if you just pulled your knees back to your chest. He was older. I believed him. Instead, he just pushed all the way in at once. Totally ripped me open. I bled steadily for a couple weeks afterward and after bowel movements for a couple of weeks after that. I was too embarrassed to tell anyone, so I just wore pads. That guy is a piece of shit. That sounds like nightmare fuel. I hope you're all healed. Unfortunately not. Although I haven't directly gone to the doctor regarding it, it is something that I have had to note when going to GI doctors. I have zero idea if there are any long-term issues. It happened when I was still pretty young. I have always had GI issues, so I have no idea if it is related or not when I describe situation. I'm not sure how a damaged O-ring would cause GI issues, but GI issues can be brutal. I've got a friend that really struggles. Hope you get your issues diagnosed and treated. Trying to find a classy way to say, I can rarely shit without needing a suppository because I can't push past a certain point. Honestly, Doctors have heard it all and seen it all, and usually on a daily basis. You need to put your embarrassment aside and talk to your health professional openly and plainly. You'll get results a lot faster and be the better for it. The amount of extreme sexual violence women experience from men on a regular basis is so fucking insane to me. I had a crush on a guy I worked with. He became my friend. I fantasized about him, looked at him with stars in my eyes. The first and only time I slept with him, and he treated me with such casual violence. He slammed me into the mattress, pulled my hair so hard I could feel the skin on my forehead being pulled taut, and there were strands of my ripped out hair all over my bed. He choked me, held me down, slapped me on the bum. It was terrible. It was painful. And I was so overwhelmed and confused, I did not even speak up for myself. I felt so disoriented and wrong when he left, and the whole ordeal made me get physically sick. What happened to me isn't uncommon. I'm just a regular person, and I thought he was a regular person that I met in a regular place. Please be gentle with the women you encounter, and please be careful if you are a woman. I'm different now because of the things I've experienced. Broken nose, blood everywhere, not even rough sex, just tried to pull a smooth flipper on top move, and she accidentally headbutted me. For some reason, this reminds me of one morning when my ex and I were both half asleep. I drew up my leg and felt my leg hit him, and it felt like it was in the groin area. Apparently it wasn't, but right at that exact moment he got hit with a really bad leg cramp. This was a fairly common occurrence for him, so he's cringing and making sounds of distress, so naturally, I thought I had nailed him in the nads. So I'm apologizing like crazy. Between gritted teeth, he says, "Rub it, rub it." And so I did. Hilarity ensued, which was something of a quick cure for that leg cramp. Not me, but my partner's testicles got twisted during sex, and they almost died from lack of blood flow. Poor dude was in so much pain and had to have surgery to correct it. Many years ago, I was out in the woods, laying on the ground naked and getting a blowjob. What I didn't realize at the beginning was that I was apparently very close to a fire ant bed. They were quite literally tearing my ass and everything else up. But I was getting a blowjob and I wasn't keen on having her stop. After about 5 minutes of pure torture, I couldn't take it anymore and told her she had to quit. That was almost 30 years ago, and I've never forgotten that incomplete blowjob and always regretted not being able to hold out a little longer. I didn't quite dislocate my jaw, but I set it off track, sucking a big one while very drunk. The right side of my face looked odd for years. I could barely open my mouth. It hurt on the right side, and it clicked a lot and locked open sometimes. One day while driving, I stopped at a red light and dropped the cap to my water bottle on the floor. I reached down to get it, and when I did, my foot let off the brake very slightly. This caused me to panic and stomp the brake while my head was still cocked to the side looking for the cap. The left side of my jaw tapped the steering wheel pretty hard. Pop! I thought, oh, I just f***ed my jaw up, but no, I could fully open my mouth. No clicking and no more pain. My teeth lined up. My face looked symmetrical. Sex injury solved. Thanks series of weird events that lined up perfectly somehow. This reminds me of what I just read a few hours ago about this girl that liked getting slapped during sex, and her BF went one too hard. It hurt a lot, but afterwards, while checking the mirror, she found out that slap fixed her similar jaw issues, LOL. Unrelated to jaw injuries, but this reminds me of one I read a few days ago. Guy is getting sloppy top from his girl, and she looks up at him and says, "Slap me." So he goes for it despite feeling uncomfortable about it. It starts to really bother him, so he has her stop so he can apologize and tell her he isn't into that. She said, "Me either. I meant slap me with your dick." I laughed so hard, thank you for reminding me of it, lame-io. To preface, I work at a healthcare clinic in a small town and know all the doctors. I honestly don't even remember exactly how the injury happened, except that it was during some of the best sex of my life with my boyfriend at the time. It was very physical, very enthusiastic, and I ended up unable to breathe well. It felt like one of my ribs was dislocated and jammed into my lung. I hoped that it would resolve itself, but after 2 days, I couldn't take it anymore and went to our walk-in clinic for osteopathic manipulation, which is sort of like chiropractic care, but way better. So I get in there, and of course it's one of the doctors that I know really well, but who is very reserved, and he does not at all take part in inappropriate workplace humor. I groaned to myself. He asks me what's wrong. I get on the table. He asks what happened. While I'm hemming and hawing, he looks at me and says, "There are bruises in the shape of a hand on me." He asks if I'm safe and if anyone is hurting me, and I blurt, "Yeah, but I like it. I mean, it's consensual. It's a sex injury." Then there was just awkward silence, and I avoided him for about 6 months after that. My partner and I have had what we have now dubbed the jalapenos incident. He chopped up and de-seeded a bunch of jalapenos from the garden with no gloves on. Soon after, and in a moment of thoughtlessness, he went to the bathroom and got all that jalapeno oil from his hands onto his junk. He did his best to wash it off, but oils can absorb. Hours later, we were getting down to business, and I just thought that there was no way I could incur third transfer jalapeno wrath. But sure enough, after a few minutes of going at it, my vag started to burn. Stuck it out though, and we both finished in flaming glory. Went to flip over onto my back for missionary, overestimated how much bed was there, fell off the side and slashed my back on the edge of the dresser. I was getting roadhead and wrecked my car. She clenched down, and I had to get 13 stitches in my dick. Luckily, she didn't bite it off. Was not a good day. This right here is why I will not do roadhead. Just about anything you want in a vehicle if it's not moving. My late wife used to get nice acrylic French tip nails. She chipped one really bad once, and she didn't file the jagged parts enough. We were getting frisky. She got handsy. The jagged edge sliced across the head of my penis. I screamed. There was blood. It hurt like fuck. Mood killed. We both laughed about it later. She called it the time she almost decapitated my penis. It was a pretty funny, yet painful incident. Pulled on the end of the condom to loosen up the tip that was too tight. The lubricant condom and my now lubricated fingers parted ways at maximum stretch, snapping the end of my excitement and putting an end to my excitement. One time I was jerking off, and when I came, there was some blood in it. I thought maybe I needed to see a doctor, but when I jerked off the next day, there was no blood, so I just didn't worry about it. UTIs in men are uncommon, but possible. Probably the culprit. I've jammed my Peter a couple times, getting in there and loving it strong. I go for a massive log jam, and wife pulls back way too far. Next thing you know, my hillbilly love muscle can look around corners like a damn Marine. It hurts, and ain't no coming back from that. Sexy time is done for the evening. It's hard to reread this with tears of laughter in my eyes. My ex bruised my cervix. He was a pretty long guy. He went too hard apparently. Next morning, I had the worst pain of my life, so I went to the DR who insisted I go to the ER because we thought something inside of me was failing, or did blood tests, ultrasounds, and a pelvic exam. I was there for 6 hours and my results? A bruised cervix with inflammation. That's the reason I had the horrible side pains. My ex wouldn't stop smiling and giggling the whole ride home. So proud of his dong for putting me in the ER. Just curious, you didn't feel your cervix getting hit? I've been told to stop because of that immediately. When I was 16, I went out with a girl in one of my high school classes. When I picked her up, she had a ring on every single finger, including her thumbs. Later that night, she gave me a hand job. She cut me up so bad that my dick bled for a week. Never again. I'm absurdly allergic to nickel. If I touch anything with nickel for more than a few seconds, I get burned. Like a chemical burn or bad poison ivy. So we're hooking up. I head downtown, and to my horror, she has a bright, shiny, nickel-infused stainless steel clit stud. I know what happened if I touched the stuff. What would happen if I put it in my mouth? I had just a couple of seconds to decide what to do. About 6 hours later, my whole body turned bright pink. My tongue doubled in size, and my eyes puffed up until I couldn't see. My brother had to drive me to the ER where I got a refreshing intravenous Benadryl cocktail. I have no regrets. ONS gone horribly wrong. We were going at it like two rabbits, unprotected and horny as ever, when I sudden fly felt a weird sensation down there. I pulled out and saw blood, so I assumed she was on her period. I asked her, but already started feeling a weird sting in my lil champ. I decided to get up, and was it off? You know, not having a blood-dripping wiener dangling and all. Well, that's when the pain started. As soon as water hit my fella, I felt a sting like no other. I collapsed in the shower and was just laying there like a sad, hairy shrimp until I could muster the power to get up again. I was panicky, scared, and just needed to get home where I felt safe, so I packed my things, kissed her goodbye, and waddled out to my motorcycle and drove home slowly. Now for the aftermath. Turns out, my foreskin, ripped open. I had an open gazing wound, which is not fun. Like, my worst was Purple Man. After 2 days in pain, I went to the doctor's office. They saw the wound, thought, oh no, he has syphilis, and needed a tissue sample. How do you get a tissue sample, you ask? You scrape off the clotted blood on the wound, and then you get some fresh Idonovan from the wound. I think I would break the poor nurse's hand, but she took it. I just clenched everything, found my happy place, and cried like the man I am while this took place. Luckily, no syphilis. I did get chlamydia though. Oh, and the lil dude. Today I have a scar on my foreskin, and it feels slightly tight during erections. I have considered circumcision, but I'm not fond of mauling my pimp shrimp like that. Hope you guys enjoyed my little story, haha. Went to spank the lady friend with a belt at her request. Missed, continued on with the arc, and full-on punched myself in the balls. Made an ungodly bark, chosh croak noise. Drop and crawl, crying to bathroom to die. She passed out from laughing so hard. She was on top, mid-act. I slipped out, no need to elaborate. I tore my banjo string trying a different position. Blood everywhere. Bonus is that it healed in a much more comfortable place, and sex has been so much better ever since, where before it hurt if I got the wrong angle. A buddy of mine broke his dick, full-on fracture. He said it was really sore for a week or so, then realized he had a significant bend in it that the doctor diagnosed as Peyronie's disease. He's had 2 surgeries already and is going to have what he called the Hugh Hefner surgery. This is so tame compared to the rest, but I was giving my partner head while both of us being on the bed, and I just fell off the bed. I still have no fucking idea how it happened, but at least it was funny. Happened a second time as I was riding him as well. In descending order of magnitude of pain and how long it lasted. Pulled a muscle in my back, trying a freestanding position we'd seen in a porno. It was helpfully suggested that I try to work on my core strength before we try it again. I could barely move. Every breath was a torture. My back was fucked for weeks. We did not try it again. Had one of my balls bitten. A full chomp. She didn't break the skin. Not sure how, but I hadn't felt a pain quite like it before. Or since. I went from lying flat out in bed to half Spider-Manning up the wall in less time than it took to think. The pain itself didn't last long. It was down to a throb after an hour of feeling like I was going to puke every time I moved, and I had to be careful of sitting position and walked funny for a couple of days. But having to talk her down off of a bad trip, that I was apparently the cause of because of me screaming in that, whilst tripping myself, whilst dealing with testicular pain, felt like it lasted an eternity. However, a few weeks afterwards, she had a taste of a similar pain. She asked me to wear cock rings. They were steel. One went around everything, the other just for the base of the shaft. I explained there was a reason I only wore one or the other at a time, but she insisted, and I didn't push the issue because I was getting sex. It was going well. She really liked how it felt. She went on top to get a better angle and managed to catch her clit in between the cock rings when she started grinding. 1 second on top, next second rolling around on the bed beside me, fetal position clutching her crotch. I think I'm going to be sick. Am I bleeding? Fully incapacitated. All the same reactions to getting kicked or hit in the nuts. I was seriously split between caring boyfriend mode and remember that time you bit one of my balls. Gloating. Caring boyfriend mode won out, but it was a diplomatic decision more than anything else. Tried getting tied up, didn't like it at all. Panicked, struggled to get loose, pinched a nerve or something, and had pain from my wrist down along my thumb for just over a week, then pins and needles sensation for a few weeks afterwards. Not me, but a good friend who hooked up with a girl at a wedding. Things got a little heated at the adjoining golf green, and apparently they went for it fully clothed. Only problem was she was wearing tights, and in their passion, he just ripped the crotch area and did the business. 10 minutes later, they're back in the club hut laughing and giggling. Then my mate went off to the toilet, only to find he was bleeding heavily from a cut right across the end of his dick. Wrapped in toilet paper, he was driven to hospital where he had stitches to repair the damage. Turns out there were strands of her tights across her crotch that got caught up and simply sawed at the end of his dick. Very nasty, going at it with a partner with me on top. I got cramp in my leg and tried to leap off, but only succeeded in tripping over a dumbbell and headbutted a dresser, sustaining a black eye and mashed gum. All while still squeaking about my cramped up leg. Not my finest hour. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.